News coverage you can count on.
When he walked in the room, he was more serious than I've seen him at any other procedure.
All eyes are on Center County, Pennsylvania. A man once revered for his career at Penn State on trial, accused of molesting 10 young boys. Team 11 coverage, Sandusky on trial, starts right now. Center County, Pennsylvania, the center of the state and the center of our news day as the Jerry Sandusky trial begins. The day has been loaded with new developments as the jury is selected, the jury that will decide whether Jerry Sandusky molested 10 young boys.
Here are the latest developments for you. Right now, 3 jurors have been picked out of the 16 needed. That includes 12 jurors and 4 alternates. Jerry Sandusky is there as well, and he is taking an active role in helping to select the jury that will decide his fate. And a major development today, the jury will not be sequestered during the trial. We have a team of reporters covering all of the angles for you as this trial begins. David Johnson is anchoring our coverage live. David, set the stage for us.
Yes, good evening, you guys in Pittsburgh and everyone. We are live in Bellefonte in Center County. This is the county seat. That is the county courthouse behind me, the center of all the action where Jerry Sandusky will be tried and judged. And as you well know, he says he is innocent. The accusations he molested 10 boys over a 15-year period are false. The prosecution, of course, sees it very differently, saying it has enough evidence to put him away for 100 years. As you might imagine, the media coverage for this trial is extensive.
But shock fell over the Penn State community this fall when the charges against Sandusky were revealed. Charges, it turns out, were years in the making.
How did it all start?
Jerry Sandusky is accused of sex crimes against 10 children, and those meetings date as far back as 1994, when Sandusky met victim 7 through the second mile at the age of 10. March 1st, 2002, Mike McQueary reports walking in on Sandusky and a boy engaged in sex acts in the Lash football building. He reported it to Joe Paterno the next day. Paterno reported it to Athletic Director Tim Curley and Vice President Gary Schultz. McQueary wouldn't be asked about it again until a grand jury convened 8 years later. The investigation ramped up in early 2009 when a teen boy tells authorities Sandusky inappropriately touched him over 4 years. In 2010, Sandusky retires from the Second Mile Foundation, which he founded for young children. November 5th, 2011, Jerry Sandusky is indicted and arrested, charged with 40 counts of sex abuse. He's released on $100,000 bail. With pressure falling on the university and questions about what head football coach Joe Paterno may have known, he announces November 9th he will resign at the end of the year.
Joe Paterno is no longer the head football coach, effective immediately.
The Board of Trustees, however, ousts him and President Graham Spanier. A night of rioting followed, fueled by students upset that Paterno was fired. On November 15th, Bob Costas interviews Sandusky by phone, asking some tough questions.
Are you sexually attracted to young boys, to underage boys?
Am I sexually attracted to underage boys? Sexually attracted? You know, no, I enjoy young people. I love to be around them. But no, I'm not sexually attracted to young boys.
The answers don't help Sandusky's public perception. On December 3rd, he appears publicly again, trying to clarify his comments to the New York Times.
If I say, no, I'm not attracted to boys, that's not the truth, because I'm attracted to young people, boys, girls.
Just a few days later, more charges are filed and Sandusky is arrested again. In January of 2012, just months after being ousted as head coach in the midst of the scandal, Joe Paterno dies. Paterno may be forever remembered for saying, "I wish I had done more." February 2012, prosecutors request jurors from another county. The request is denied. March 2012, the defense petitions to have the charges dismissed. A judge denies the request, but pushes the trial back to June 5th. May 25th, the Second Mile announces plans to close and shift assets to a Texas charity. And early June, the defense goes all the way to the Supreme Court to have the trial delayed, but the trial still begins June 5th.
A very, very busy day here in Bellefonte Center County as the bell tolls here, 6 o'clock, and already 6 jurors have been chosen. They're looking, of course, for 12 total jurors and 4 alternates. And they've chosen 6, possibly 8 will be chosen today. And Jerry Sandusky was in the courtroom. He has taken a very, very active role in choosing jurors with his attorney, of course. Jurors chosen from the immediate State College area, of course, the area where Penn State University is located. We have a team of reporters gathered here to give you every angle of this major story. And Channel 11's Rick Earl is live with us again with more on Jerry Sandusky's role in this whole process. Very interesting, Rick.
Yeah, David, it has been a long day for Jerry Sandusky. They've been at this jury selection process since 8:30 this morning.
With those people, another 100 potential jurors who were sent home much earlier in the day. They will also be returning to this courthouse tomorrow morning.
Bellefonte may seem like a quiet, normal town in central Pennsylvania, but turn the corner and oh, quite the opposite. You will see dozens, hundreds of media from all over the country.
David Johnson in Bellefonte, now back live to you.
Okay, while David gets over to that press conference, we want to give you a better idea of who may testify during this trial. Both the prosecution and defense questioned the potential jurors today about whether they knew any of these possible witnesses, and there are some big names. They include the alleged victims, who have to use their real names, Sue Paterno and Jay Paterno, who are Joe Paterno's wife and son. Sandusky's own family members may be asked to testify. Mike McQuarrie and his father, John. You'll remember McQuarrie was the one who told the grand jury he saw Sandusky assaulting a boy in the shower. And former University President Graham Spanier. Day one of the most anticipated trials of the year, and already things are moving quickly.
No one's joking around.
We're taking you close to the action inside and outside the courtroom.
This is what it looks like actually behind the scenes.
We're bringing you live Team 11 coverage of Jerry Sandusky on trial. The breaking news right now, day one of jury selection is done.
Just since then, 6 jurors have been selected. A total of 9 have been selected.
Jerry Sandusky and his attorney just left the courthouse a short time ago. I asked them if they had any comment. His attorney, Joe Amendola, told me, quote, "We are making progress." When I asked Jerry Sandusky, he would only shake his head. Now, we just shot that video about a half hour ago, video of Jerry Sandusky and his attorney leaving the courthouse after wrapping up day one of jury selection here in Center County.
The judge and the attorneys agreeing on 9 seated jurors. In the words of the judge today, he said, listen, we're in rural Pennsylvania and these connections cannot be avoided.
We're looking at the fallout from the scandal. Jobs have been lost and a big charity has closed. Changes came right at the top of Penn State. Long-term president Graham Spanier was fired.
This is Rick Earl live at the Jerry Sandusky trial, where prosecutors just wrapped up opening statements. They showed jurors pictures of the alleged victims when they were only children. They also put up on a big screen the words humiliation, fear, and shame, and they say that led to silence. Of course, the defense will begin with opening statements any minute now. We will have complete coverage throughout the day here on Channel 11.
It has been 7 months since his arrest. Today now, day one in the Jerry Sandusky trial. It's expected to last 3 weeks. Opening statements are underway in Center County.
Already we've heard some strong words from prosecutors. We have Team 11 coverage. Channel 11's Dave Bondi as more on what the judge is saying today. But first, Rick Earl, live outside the courthouse with a rundown on opening statements. Rick?
Yeah, Todd, a predatory pedophile. That's what prosecutors called Jerry Sandusky.
I've been in the courtroom annex. It's a building right across the street. They have a video feed set up so we can see exactly what's going on in the courtroom, but we must follow the same exact rules that everyone in the courtroom follow. When the judge comes in, we must all stand, and we're learning pretty quick that this judge is very strict. Judge John Cleland, you see him here on the right. He spent about 25 minutes telling the jurors how important it is that they must not talk about this case with anybody.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are beginning an hour early today to bring you special coverage of the start of the Jerry Sandusky trial.
Day one has been busy. A lot of big developments. Let's get right to them. This is a look at the former coach entering the Center County Courthouse today. He has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing.
Plus, shocking testimony in court. An alleged victim testified he was sexually abused by Sandusky as a young teen.
And the entire world is watching it all. Cameras capturing every moment in Center County.
We have a complete team of reporters inside and outside the courtroom. And our Channel 11 News anchor David Johnson is helping to keep us on top of the latest developments. He kicks off our Team 11 coverage. Good evening, David.
Good evening, Gordon and Peggy. Thank you, everyone. And I can tell you it's a very intense situation here, a much greater police presence.
David, today we saw love letters that victim number 4 says he got from Jerry Sandusky. Those letters were projected onto a screen in the courtroom.
Opening statements began at 9 this morning. There were a lot of big developments from the courtroom, so let's get you caught up right away. Testimony began with alleged victim number 4 taking the stand. He described a relationship he says began in the shower, then turned into physical acts. The prosecution described the former Penn State coach as a, quote, predatory pedophile. But the defense portrayed Sandusky differently, saying he was a father figure who is now being victimized. Channel 11's Rick Earl spent the day in Center County. He has more tonight on this first day of testimony.
A powerful display by the prosecution, highlighted by photos of young boys, 3 dramatic words, and graphic testimony from an alleged victim. The alleged victim, now 28, left the courthouse Monday afternoon after testifying for more than 3 hours. He told jurors playful soap battles led to the sexual encounters when he was a young teenager. He said Sandusky treated him like a girlfriend.
The former Penn State assistant football coach had nothing to say when he left the Center County Courthouse last night. Jurors will hear more testimony from the alleged victims today. Yesterday, a 28-year-old man testified that Sandusky lavished him with gifts and said he'd lose them when he was a young teenager if he ever told anyone what was going on. But the defense came out swinging too. Channel 11's Dave Bondi is one of our reporters covering this big story in Center County. He's live at the courthouse this morning. Dave?
Todd, good morning. Sandusky's defense team already calling to question the credibility of the alleged victims in this case.
Well, Peggy, good afternoon. Emotional testimony from victim number 1. He repeatedly broke down and cried at times. He had to stop to compose himself. It was very dramatic and compelling testimony here this morning. Now, we were there this morning as victim 1, an 18-year-old who just graduated from high school, arrived at the courthouse here in Center County. We are not identifying the victims. Now, he testified he was molested on numerous occasions in the basement of Jerry Sandusky's home.
In brand new video, Mike McQueary leaving the Center County Courthouse just in the last hour after testifying against Jerry Sandusky.
His story was graphic. It was tough to listen to.
And on all day, deep, dark secrets coming to light in court. Mike McQueary is a key prosecution witness, as you know, describing an encounter between Jerry Sandusky and a boy in that locker room shower. Before that tearful testimony, victim 1 broke down as he described what happened to him in Jerry Sandusky's basement. That victim faced tough questions from defense attorney Joe Amendola. Got tense between the two during cross-examination. Rick Earl and Courtney Brennan have been our team since the story first came to light, the accusation 7 months ago.
They're in Center County tonight. Courtney just left the courthouse and talked to someone who is calling Mike McQueary a liar. Courtney?
I did, Peggy, and as David said earlier, Mike McQueary is such a high-profile witness, almost a make-or-break witness for the prosecution in their case against Jerry Sandusky. And so when his name was called in court this afternoon, before he walked in, there was a hush in the courtroom and then a lot of whispering and excitement when he walked in.
Yeah, Courtney, it was gripping and dramatic testimony from victim 1. He repeatedly broke down and cried on the witness stand.
The testimony did wrap up without a word from the defendant. Channel 11's Courtney Brennan tried to ask Sandusky why he decided to keep quiet. So, Courtney, what did he have to say?
Well, Darius, we will get to that in just 1 second. I do want to tell you, though, sources tell us that Jerry Sandusky wanted to testify. He wanted to get on that stand. He wanted to talk to the jury. And in a last-minute decision, his defense team decided this morning not to let him get on that stand.
Today, they want to hear the testimony from one of the key witnesses for the prosecution again. Channel 11's Kara Sapida is one of our team of reporters at the Center County Courthouse. She has details on what the jury will be hearing first thing this morning. Kara.
Jennifer, good morning from Center County. I want to start with something that we found pretty interesting. When we got here around 3:30 this morning, there were two women in lawn chairs sitting on the Center County Courthouse steps. Right now, I want to show you there's about a half a dozen people up there. These are just members of the public waiting to get the few seats available that are open to the public.
Sandusky and the entire nation are on verdict watch tonight. The jury deliberating now for a second day. But tonight there could be reason to believe they're making some progress.
Here is the very latest. Twice today, the jury came back into the courtroom with questions for the judge.
We are going to be watching for a verdict throughout the evening and all through the weekend. When that verdict comes, we will bring you the news live on the air and online at WPXI.com.
Breaking news.
Good evening, everyone. Breaking news, a verdict in the Jerry Sandusky Trial sex abuse case. Jerry Sandusky moments ago arrived at the courthouse to face the jury that will decide if he goes to jail. I'm Darieth Chisholm. Thanks for being with us tonight. Jerry Sandusky is learning his verdict right now. The jury finished 2 long days of deliberations about a half hour ago before reaching a decision tonight. Channel 11's Courtney Brennan joins us live outside of the courthouse. So, Courtney, what's happening now?
Well, Darieth, this is the moment we have all been waiting for. The entire nation is watching. After more than 12 hours of deliberations today and 8.5 hours of deliberations yesterday, we finally have a verdict in the Jerry Sandusky case. Everyone wants to know, what did the jury decide? Here it is. Here it is. 45?
45 counts guilty.
45 counts?
45 counts, only 2 not guilty.
Okay. Jerry Sandusky was found guilty on 45 counts. 45 counts he was found guilty, only 2 not guilty counts of indecent assault. Renee Kaminsky, who was in the courtroom, says Jerry was stunned. 45 counts, Jerry Sandusky was found guilty.
We've learned that there has been obviously a verdict in this case against Jerry Sandusky, guilty on 45 counts, 2 not guilty of the counts that he faced in total. Joined now with Blaine Jones. He is our legal expert. You've been watching this case with us for some time. This came relatively quickly. 2 days of deliberations. We got the word that the jury had reached a verdict probably about a half hour ago, and now these counts, 45 of them found not guilty.
Darieth, it came quickly, however, it is not a shock. I predicted that it would come by Friday. I thought it would come by this weekend. Reason being, the evidence was simply overwhelming against Mr. Sandusky. I thought that the defense, unfortunately, did not come out aggressive. If you have a case and the evidence is overwhelming against your client, you come out like Mike Tyson. You come out swinging, you come out with haymakers. In my opinion, they came out tentative. They threw pity-pat jabs, and as a result, Mr. Sandusky gets knocked out.
I just left the courtroom, and I have to tell you, Dottie was crying the entire time. Jerry looked absolutely stunned as the verdict was read, and it was read by counts. I watched the jury when they came in. They never even looked over at Jerry Sandusky, and as they read the count one by one, and it was very, very solemn in that courtroom, Jerry just stared at the jury and just seemed like he was in absolute shock at the whole thing. I looked over, and there was Dottie and all her family members, everyone that she had come into court with, which included her daughter, and it looked like the family members that she had been in court all week with, including some good friends of hers. They were reaching over and trying to comfort her. The judge said, "Mr. Sandusky, you have been judged guilty by a jury of your peers." He then revoked bond for Jerry Sandusky and remanded him into sheriff's custody.
In handcuffs, being reprimanded into the sheriff's custody. This man, of course, just found guilty on 45 counts in these sex abuse cases that we've followed for some time. He is quickly being, escorted right to the county jail, the prison there in Center County. And here are a number of people perhaps asking questions or responding, but he is now a man who is facing some serious jail time. Of course, the crowd just out of the Center County courtroom learning the verdict that Jerry Sandusky had been found guilty on 45 of the 48 sex.
The Sandusky family is very disappointed, obviously, by the verdict of the jury, but we respect their verdict.
And to see the day that this defendant, a serial child predator who committed horrific acts upon his victims, causing lifelong and life-changing consequences for all of them, has been held accountable for his crimes.
With breaking news.
the most powerful men at Penn State, failed to take any steps for 14 years to protect the children who Sandusky victimized.
The report is out on Penn State's internal investigation into the Jerry Sandusky child sexual abuse allegations, and the former head of the FBI is calling out the university leaders. Louis Freeh points the finger at 4 men who are at the top, including head coach Joe Paterno.
He says they concealed facts, creating a dangerous situation for other children. The report shows football coach Joe Paterno, President Graham Spanier, athletic director Tim Curley, and Vice President Gary Schultz showed, quote, total disregard for the victims. Freeh says Paterno and the other men decided not to report Sandusky for an alleged assault of a boy in the football locker room showers to avoid bad publicity.
Tired 11 investigator Rick Earl's been sifting through the 200-page-long report. He's here to explain just how damning it is to the 4 men who are at the top and devastating for the university, Rick.
Yeah, Todd and Peggy, as the leaks were getting out, we expected this to be big, but there are even more bombshells here. The big takeaway from this report, it finds a total disregard for Sandusky's victims by the men in power at Penn State. I want to get right to the specifics now. One of the first big highlights is that conversation between Joe Paterno and Mike McQueary, right after McQueary reported witnessing something inappropriate with Sandusky and a child in the shower. Paterno said, quote, "You did what you had to do. It is my job now to figure out what we want to do."
And now today's big story. The Freeh Report points the finger right at Joe Paterno and the prominent people at the top of Penn State University. And now we're taking you beyond the results of that 7-month-long investigation. From the get-go, we've been tracking every twist and turn in the Penn State sex abuse scandal.
And since November, while we brought you the stories day in and day out, former FBI Director Louis Freeh and his team were conducting a massive investigation. Today, when the results were released, they took aim at former University President Graham Spanier, former Vice President Gary Schultz, former head football coach Joe Paterno, and former athletic director Tim Curley, saying, quote, these men concealed Sandusky's activities from the Board of Trustees, the university community, and authorities. They exhibited a striking lack of empathy for Sandusky's victims by failing to inquire as to their safety and well-being.
Our Team 11 coverage continues now with Scott McFarland in Washington, D.C., Rick Earl in our satellite center. After sorting through the entire report and picking out the most important points, Rick, what'd you find?
Well, David, first I got to tell you, this was a daunting task for investigators. They interviewed more than 400 people and reviewed 3.5 million electronic documents. But perhaps the most revealing email, this one right here, that suggests Joe Paterno didn't want to go to the authorities a decade ago. PSU President Graham Spanier, Athletic Director Tim Curley, and Vice President Gary Schultz met to discuss the 2001 allegation against Jerry Sandusky.
Graham Spanier, Joe Paterno, Tim Curley, and Gary Schultz did not put the welfare of children first. An event like this can never happen again in the Penn State University community.
And some powerful words tonight from the Penn State Board of Trustees. A new report out into the Penn State sex abuse scandal shows a cover-up at the very highest levels. The probe, led by former FBI Director Louis Freeh, finds that Joe Paterno and others hid information to avoid bad publicity. Let's take a look. The report says Paterno, President Graham Spanier, Athletic Director Tim Curley, and Vice President Gary Schultz did nothing to protect children against a sexual predator.
Penn State punished. The NCAA hands down its sanctions in the wake of the sex abuse scandal. First, let's break down the sanctions and what they will mean to the university. There are 5 major punishments. The university is being fined $60 million. It breaks down to $12 million a year for 5 years that will be put into an endowment for programs that serve sex child abuse victims. The school cannot use money from other sports or academics. All football wins from 1998 to 2011 are being vacated. That means Joe Paterno will no longer hold the top spot in the record books. He falls to number 12. Penn State will be banned from bowl games and postseason play for 4 years. The football team will have its scholarships reduced for 4 years. Plus, incoming and current players will be allowed to transfer immediately to another university. The football program is also under a 5-year probation. And no doubt, today's announcement will impact the school for years to come. We sent Channel 11's Courtney Brennan up to Penn State's campus in State College to get reaction to this sweeping punishment.
A few handwritten messages, a small bouquet of flowers, a candle or two. The atmosphere outside Beaver Stadium was almost like a grave site where mourning Penn State fans came to say goodbye to a football program that's now forever changed.
I guess it's a real depressed feeling. I mean, I guess it's a disbelief at the same time.
Disbelief over the devastating sanctions handed down by the NCAA. The university was spared the so-called death penalty.
The judge just handed down that sentence. The sentence reads like this: no less than 30 years, no more than 60 years. So that would be 30 to 60 years in prison for Jerry Sandusky. The judge just handing down that sentence minutes ago. Of course, Sandusky was convicted of sexually abusing 10 children last summer. The conviction came down then. He was found guilty by a jury. Today, the judge sentencing him. Of course, the judge could have sentenced him to up to 400 years in prison. That was the maximum sentence. But the judge this morning here in Center County giving Jerry Sandusky 30 to 60 years behind bars. Of course, Sandusky is 68 years old now, and that will effectively mean that he has been given a life sentence for these crimes. You live pictures of Jerry Sandusky. He is being escorted right now out of the back of the Center County Courthouse here in Bellefonte. These are live pictures of Jerry Sandusky being escorted out just after the sentence was handed down, 30 to 60 years in prison. Sandusky, you see, just put in the back of a police cruiser.
4 of Sandusky's victims spoke out in court, at times tearfully to Sandusky. Sandusky read a short statement where he continued to profess his innocence. And shortly after today's hearing, his attorney promised an appeal and called the whole thing a conspiracy. And that's where Channel 11's Rick Earl picks up our big story coverage live at the Center County Courthouse in Bellefonte. Rick.
Well, David, Jerry Sandusky rambled on for 15 minutes. It was a very bizarre speech where he talked about a horse, a dog, even life in prison. In the end, an attorney for one of the victims called his speech the ramblings of a madman. Handcuffed and shackled, a much thinner Jerry Sandusky escorted into court. Inside, he proclaimed his innocence and talked about being an underdog, even referencing a horse. Quote, "The movie Seabiscuit is a favorite of mine," he said. "I love people who won't quit."
I was there inside the courtroom when the first victim walked up to the podium to speak. Jerry Sandusky staring right at him. That young man, fighting back tears, looked at Sandusky, telling him how he has destroyed his life. It's a day Jerry Sandusky's victims have been waiting for. The opportunity to confront the man who they say took their childhood. I was in court watching as Sandusky stared at the victims while they read their statements. Despite his stare, they continued talking, holding back tears. Victim number one's attorney said for his client, today was a chance to start his life over.
It was very emotional. It was very cathartic to him, the whole experience.
I just think it was a mindset. He's guilty as hell. It doesn't matter.
That drew an angry response from prosecutor Joe McGettigan.
His statement today was a masterpiece of banal self-delusion, completely untethered from reality.
Before sentencing Sandusky, the judge told him, quote, "You abused the trust of those who trusted you." Sandusky won't be eligible for parole until he is 98 years old. At the Center County Courthouse in Bellefonte, Rick Earl, Channel 11 News.
And the latest details tonight, while the accusations dated back more than a decade, the first news about Sandusky's alleged abuse first broke in early 2011. Let's take a closer look at how we got to today's sentencing. News of the accusations against Sandusky broke on March 31st, 2011. The Harrisburg Patriot News reported Sandusky is the subject of a grand jury investigation. Then on November 5th, we brought you these images. Sandusky arrested and arraigned on 40 criminal counts. More than a month later, on December 13th, Sandusky pleads not guilty at a preliminary hearing. On April 5th, a pretrial hearing takes place. Days later, the judge puts a gag order on the case. Then on June 5th, jury selection begins. 7 women, 5 men, 4 alternates are chosen. On June 22nd, Sandusky is convicted on 45 counts of child sex abuse and led away in handcuffs. And then today, Sandusky learns his sentence, 30 to 60 years in prison.